Mauvais temps.
She like man we fried. Big ride this man we fried. Top right. She like man we fried. Big ride this man we fried. Top right.
Big ride. Make her come inside when she see the gas stick. Her eyes open wide.
Hi folks, good evening and thank you so much for joining me on this Sunday evening, because I know you have plenty other things you all could be doing. Let me see where my comments thread at, where folks at. Hi Janelle Beth. Hi, I just lost it. Hi Celestine, hi Anne, hi Merlene, hi Sharon, hey Jazzy Boisson. Yes, I'm here. Hi Nicole, hi Danielle, hi Renee, hi Tasha. So I only know one time. I am not the only person. Oh, well, actually, I am the only person. I am not the only entity inside the studio this evening, right? I have Starboy. Starboy, come here and stop your foolishness till I'm out to put you outside. I have Starboy and Stella in the studio with me, and I might have to actually stop the live if Starboy continues with this foolishness, because I really can't have him barking through this live. But he didn't go out to spend time with his dog walker today. Instead, he went walking this morning. So I'm really hoping that I don't have to do the live at a different time. So give me 2 seconds. Right, go that way and settle down. Otherwise, I'll put you outside. So I gave them treats. Hopefully they will hopefully the treats will have them settle down. Yes, Starboy is back. All right, so folks, we have plenty things to discuss this evening. Chantal James is saying that she missed last week. And Chantal, if you missed last week, I'm real sorry for you, because last week was pretty good. Last week, during the live, in the midst of the live, I talked about some things that somehow managed to happen this week. So folks who would have been in the live last week would have heard me talk about the whole reason there was this rumor flying around about Sharon Rowley, right, the Prime Minister's wife. And I would have indicated to you all that there was this entire rumor concocted about Mrs. Rowley allegedly having some sort of an affair with a colleague of hers. And it was done to create a distraction because the opposition at that point in time, move from there. The opposition at that point in time was trying to distract from the fact that 2 persons affiliated with the party, one an MP, another person an alleged financier. And you know, the word financier is thrown around so broadly in this country. I'm careful about just labeling somebody a financier, but the person is closely affiliated. Stop it. The person is closely affiliated with the United National Congress and with members of the party, right? So let's just say friend of the United National Congress, and there's nothing wrong with being the friend of people in, political parties. Everybody allowed political affiliation. So I told you all last week that all of that noise and bangarang about Mrs. Rowley was to distract from the story breaking at that point in time, because there was the potential for the story breaking then. And the reason the United National Congress was so concerned about the story breaking then was that they were aware that the police had begun questioning persons. As a matter of fact, there had been a whole story about... Y'all, give me 2 seconds here. No. Just no. Not when I'm doing this. There was a whole story when the Prime Minister had gone to do his medical. He had gone to do a visit to the United States, and he'd also gone to do a medical. There was a whole story about the Prime Minister being held for questioning. The Prime Minister at that point in time had gone to Washington, D.C. He had done several visits with Joe Biden, with the United States' president, America's president, Joe Biden, and a couple other persons from that government. And the rumor that was being spread, and a lot of the rumor spreading happened on Senator Lakshmi Dayal's page and Marshall Lorraine Walker's page. It referenced the Prime Minister being in the United States and being there for a long stretch of time and possibly being held by the police to answer questions. Again, that story was, or that rumor was circulated because at that point in time, somebody linked to the United National Congress was answering questions in the United States as well about banks and bank accounts. But I'm not going to get into that. Is not something that I could put out into the public domain. If I put it out into the public domain, it's likely to land me in trouble, and I really and truly am looking for no new pre-action protocol letters to have to be answering, because it has taken me a couple of days to have to sit down and respond to pre-action protocol letters. So, right. So last week I talked about it. Last week I pointed out that it had something to do with an MP and a car, and an MP having to answer questions for a car. Lo and behold, this week, boom shot. Boom shot. You hear charges being laid. Persons have at least two charges that they need to answer to. I'm surprised that there's only 2 charges, to be quite honest. Charges they have to answer to, and of course, the United National Congress had to find a way to respond. And so the response thus far has been to label the institutions in this country as PNM institutions. But we're going to get into that shortly. Before I jump into the stuff to do with David Lee, MP David Lee, I want to talk about this guy, because we talked about him for quite some time when he was doing all his lives and Farley was responding, and of course we sat right here and talked through Farley's entire we sat right here and talked through. No, it's not Stella that barking. All of you who think it's Stella that barking, it is actually Starboy. That is Starboy's I want attention please. So I've just handed him yet another treat. So we sat down here for 10 minutes and listened to Farley's press conference. And I'm glad that so many persons had the opportunity to listen to Farley's press conference with me. Because it is only in listening to Farley's press conference that you all became aware of the level of foolishness that was going on with payments and spending in the THA, and the fact that the THA, or rather Farley as Chief Secretary, was in one breath saying that the THA not doing wildness with money and expenditure, and then in the next breath, while he's explaining things, you're beginning to realize, but them ain't really following any proper corporate governance structures here at all. Money just spending while anyhow. In any case, so we do the live. And then right after that, we hear, that Duke looking to challenge Farley. He looking to bring motion of no confidence. And then, a couple days after the threats to bring the motion of no confidence, Duke holds a press conference and indicates at the press conference that he is stepping down. Now, what is interesting about this tendering of his resignation as Deputy Chief Secretary is this. 1, Duke thought that he would have been in a position to swing the support inside the THA in his direction. If the THA support inside the THA hasn't swung in his direction, and he is the political leader of the PDP, it then points to the development of a rift within the PDP. And you're going to have persons who have to make a choice between whether they're going to continue to align themselves with Farley or whether they're going to align themselves with Watson Duke. During the week, there were interviews that I posted up on my page with various residents from the Roxborough, Delaford, Lansfumi, Palatovier end of Tobago. So basically Tobago East, right? The part of the northeastern top side of Tobago. And so all of the persons would have been talking about whether Duke right, whether Farley right, how it looking, and of course all of the issues that are arising from it. Now, Farley, in my opinion, has more questions that needs to be answered. Because somebody needs to explain to me who's giving Duke all of the permission and authority that Duke has been getting to travel all over the world. Duke has been to Dubai. Duke has been regularly in the United States or various parts of North America. And then this week we saw Duke in St. Lucia. Now, Duke has been going to all of these places and acting, functioning almost as if he is either an ambassador on behalf of the government of the Republic of Tobago, because it can't be the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, or he has been acting as if he's the Minister of Foreign Affairs or the Minister of Trade. The THA has never made it absolutely clear what was Duke's portfolio, what was Duke doing, and whether all of the traveling that was taking place under Duke were things planned and budgeted for. So when I saw the interview earlier on in the week, where Duke was in St. Lucia representing the government of Tobago, representing the THA. This is after he has stepped down as the Deputy Chief Secretary. By this time, he would have tendered his resignation as Deputy Chief Secretary. So he's basically Assemblyman Duke. So Assemblyman Duke is in St. Lucia and talking about revamping CARICOM. And then I thought, okay, who is Duke representing here? Is he representing his political party? So did he visit St. Lucia as a representative of the PDP? And so if he's visited St. Lucia as a representative of the PDP, shouldn't he just be talking about party politics? Instead, he is there talking about THA politics, talking about Farley, and talking about making connections between Tobago and St. Lucia, as if he is the Secretary for Trade, or as if he is an ambassador, or as if he is the Chief Secretary himself. So to me, Duke has hit loose cannon mode. And when you have a member, not a member, because a member is to imply that he's rank and file. You have the leader of a party who was the Deputy Chief Secretary of the THA acting as a rogue agent. That is a recipe for chaos. And I think Farley needs to step up at some point in time and explain what precisely was Duke's role. What were his duties when he was the Deputy Chief Secretary of the THA? And what are his duties now? Since he's resigned and he's still traveling, is he traveling on the state dime? Is the public purse paying for the traveling? Is the public paying for Duke to have gone to St. Lucia? And when Duke is in St. Lucia speaking on behalf of the PDP as well as on behalf of the THA, what does that mean? Those things need to be answered. And they need to be answered because when you step out of the island of Tobago and you go to other countries and you start speaking as if you are representing Trinidad and Tobago, then the rest of us have an opportunity now to speak and throw we 2 cents in and start to ask questions. It ain't looking good. A lot of it is not looking good. And a lot of it is in the realm of dangerous. Right? So that's what I wanted to raise, the issue of Duke and what has happened since then. And also to point this out. In all of this, since the Duke has tendered his resignation, of course, noise around that whole THA fiasco has begun to die down. But we still don't have any questions answered about the expenditure on that particular incident. We know for certain tickets were paid for. We know for certain that the THA gave the undertaking to pay for accommodations and to pay for catering. What I want to know is how much of that is actual sanctioned spending. I would imagine the airline tickets, that's sanctioned spending. But the rest of it, the board and lodging and food, how much of that was sanctioned spending? How much of that is going to end up in the Auditor General's report? And we have to take a closer look at it. So not because Duke has tendered his resignation, does it mean we need to stop throwing an eye on what is coming out of the THA? Because I guess it's not little, that week of bacchanal that took place there in the THA, I would imagine is just the surface of what is taking place inside the THA right now. So, right, that's the Watson Duke thing. And now I'm going to move on to what I'm really here for. Because I know all are here for the Fast and the Furiously. I know that's what all are here for. The Fast and the Furiously. So, hey boy, listen. Trinidad's a hell of a place, Trinidad is a hell of a place. So, Mark Bus this week. Boom shot. A man messaged me, right? He messaged me and he said, "Girl, don't say nothing. Or don't say nothing yet. But we in a position where they're about to press charges." So I say, press charges for who? So they say, for MP David Lee. I then ask, is his business partner in the country? Because Tong say, since the questioning start, Hugh Leong Poi, the businessman who they've alleged is the person benefiting with respect to the vehicle that MP Lee has purchased, Hugh Leong Poi is now out of the country. And so the TTPS are actually waiting for Mr. Leong Poi to get back into Trinidad and Tobago to press charges. I don't know if anybody wondered, well, whoa, how come we only hearing about charges for David Lee and we're not hearing about charges for Mr. Leong Poi? So apparently one gentleman is in North America somewhere, and the second, and well, of course, David Lee is in Trinidad. Now, the last time, or I think the only time I would have mentioned Hugh Leong Poi's name here is in reference to the FUL report. Y'all remember I would have done a live last season where I went through the FUL audit report. That first report, the report that had Gary Griffith very much up in his fields. He was actually interviewed in the report. So he's one of the persons that gave evidence in the report. And on one page of the report, Hugh Leong Poi's name features as one of the dealers whose, I guess, applications for FULs, because he would have been facilitating the applications of FULs from members of the public. He was one of the dealers whose applications were being processed and fast-tracked very quickly. So that's the last time I mentioned his name here, in conjunction with the FUL audit report and, of course, the then Commissioner of Police. So when I heard this particular story here, I said to myself, boy, look how chickens coming home to roost, and look how all of the connections are beginning to show up. So David Lee has been charged, and there are 2 sets of charges, if I am not mistaken. So let's take a look at the charges, and after we take a look at the charges, I want us to then listen to, I'm going to read out what David Lee would have said. Why is this giving me problems to open up now? Just now. 2 seconds. Okay, there we go. We're sorted. Where are the charges? There we go. Right, so the charges are, during the period of the 24th of May 2019 and the 8th of June 2019, so this is several years ago, this is prior to COVID, in the island of Trinidad, David Lee, a member of parliament, conspired with Hugh Leong Poi to defraud the state of Trinidad and Tobago of the sum of $1,416,292.65. by A. David Lee applying for and obtaining tax exemptions in the sum of $1,416,292.65 on the purported purchase by the said David Lee of a Mercedes-Benz AMG G63 wagon motor vehicle. B. David Lee having falsely represented that his purchase of the said Mercedes-Benz motor vehicle was for the use and benefit of said David Lee in the performance of his official duties, when in fact that vehicle was being purchased by Hugh Leong Poi for his use and benefit, Hugh Leong Poi not being entitled to such exemptions. And the second set of charges, during the period of 24th March 2019 and 24th May 2019 in the island of Trinidad, being in a public office as a member of parliament, falsely and dishonestly applied for and obtained tax exemptions in the sum of $1,416,292.65 for the purported purchase by the said David Lee of a Mercedes-Benz motor vehicle for his use and benefit in the performance of his official duties, knowing that the vehicle was being purchased by Hugh Leong Poi and knowing that the said Hugh Leong Poi not being entitled to such exemptions. Now, David Lee came out almost immediately and said, where do I have it? He came out almost immediately and said, the first thing he says, this is PNM propaganda at its best. But I hoping I could read this thing, yes, because it was kind of on the faded side. So he says, as the member of parliament for Pointe-a-Pierre, I would like to respond to the political witch hunt. So the first thing he does is imply that a police investigation is a political witch hunt and distraction by this government, which has resulted in charges being laid against me. Now, what David Lee is trying to do here is obfuscate. And he's obfuscating the issue. So you come to him, you charge him for something, you accuse him of something, and the minute he gets charged and accused with something, he then appeals to the public and appeals to the public throwing an entirely different slant. So he's not seeking to address any questions, and I can understand because it's now a matter under investigation. He's not seeking to address the actual charges. He decides he's going to throw as much mud as he could possibly throw. So a month ago or 6 weeks ago, they throw all of the mud that they could have thrown preemptively, running rumors about who with who and who not with who. And now that the time has passed and they no longer have that ammunition to throw, the ammunition now is to go with the police is a PNM entity, and every other state institution here is a PNM entity, and so it's a political thing. And of course, the minute they start calling or labeling entities PNM and PNM and PNM, you know that it is not just politics, but it is also race and tribalism that gets mixed in there. So they're trying to give the impression that the police force is mostly African or entirely African, when we know that that is not the case. The police force in Trinidad and Tobago has a range of various Trinbagonians in it, whether of East Indian descent, whether of African descent, whether of mixed descent. There are some persons of Chinese descent, etc., 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 inside our police force. But the UNC always ever having to clang very specific bells, very, very specific dog whistles. So immediately comes with, is a PNM witch hunt. The PNM did not investigate David Lee. The People's National Movement has nothing to do with the investigation of David Lee. However, a lot of the information that came out about this did get into Parliament. And how did it end up getting into Parliament? Because MP Rudal Munilal get up in the People Parliament and started to talk about all who purchasing high-end vehicles. I don't know if you all remember that. Back in 2019, this became a big talk, late 2019 into early 2020, thereabouts, in the Parliament, because Munilal get up in Parliament and started to talk about all who have expensive cars. He didn't talk about himself, right? But he did talk about other persons having expensive cars, and he started to name people. This one have this vehicle, that one have that vehicle. And then media here ran with a story. So that same Friday evening in Parliament, going into the weekend, media began to run with a particular story about expensive vehicles, but expensive vehicles that have gotten the tax exemption, but only from the cabinet side. And when that began to happen, I started to ask questions and put out information, because Moonilal, who was calling everybody else for having purchased vehicles, was a person who, on a salary of about $20-something thousand, he too had purchased a very expensive Mercedes-Benz, a Benz that worth about $800,000, $900,000 or something like that, so in the showroom. So Moonilal had come into the parliament to distract, and this is what you all need to understand. Whenever they go for those emotive issues that will get people up in arms, so money and sex and intrigue, those kinds of issues, those issues get raised in parliament to distract from another issue. So he would have come and he would have raised talk about who have expensive car and who don't have expensive car, and the entire population was up in arms about who does get the vehicle exemption. And then eventually I had to come out, and a number of other persons came out and said, but this business of the vehicle exemption is something that all traveling officers in the public service have access to. All traveling officers. But not everybody has access to the same degree of exemption. But it is a feature of the remuneration package of all traveling officers. So people who have to be using their vehicles and going about doing the work of the public, they have access to this tax exemption. So when that happened, late 2019 into 2020, it became a big deal. It ended up being a story on the front pages, and because of things raised in parliament, some of what came up in parliament eventually became part of a police investigation. Why? Because there was one MP who would have gotten a tax exemption, we just read out the charges, of about $1.4 million. And so a vehicle that was costing almost $3 million, you need to stop that. A vehicle that was costing almost $3 million, he would have paid about $1 million for, and so got a massive exemption. So it ended up becoming a police investigation. And this week here, the investigation culminated. You can't continue with that. I will put you out. Oops, no, I'm not coming out of that. What do I need to? Right, yes, good. So, you all, I may need to pause this and start a different life, because I don't want this barking in the background. I really and truly want to be in a position where I can speak to all of this without being disturbed. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to start back in a little bit. Okay? Give me 2 minutes.